Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the all-new radio and television business report InFOCUS video podcast. This is Adam R. Jacobson. I'm the editor-in-chief here at Broadcast Media's balanced voice for business, regulatory, and financial news. You can find it every business day at RBR.com. The InFOCUS video podcast is presented by .fm, streaming social podcaster broadcast. Get a .fm domain name by heading over to get.fm today. And if you'd like to be a sponsor on this beautiful podcast, well, feel free to contact me directly at adam@rbr.com. I'll personally connect you with our relationship building specialist here at Streamline Publishing. Well, without further ado, let's go on with the show and introduce today's guest. That is Greg Guy. He is the founder and managing partner of Tideline Partners. Greg is known across the broadcast media industry as one of the top brokers handling radio and television stations of all types. He joins us today to give us his insight on the transactions marketplace, how everything in Washington is impacting the deal-making environment, and we mean everything, and how the low-power television businesses in particular, as Greg has emerged as one of the top brokers in the LPTV world. That is a lot. So let's not waste any time. Welcome to the podcast, Greg. It's great to be having you here.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
I really hardly know where to begin, but on September 8th, the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, shared that at the September open meeting, a vote to begin the 2022 quadrennial review in the end of 2025 or perhaps 2026 of the FCC's rules will be had. Now, specifically, the FCC wants to look at the rule that bans two of the big four networks from combining. He also wants to seek a review of local radio and television ownership rules. That is a lot. Now, what does this mean coming from someone in the media brokerage community, such as you in particular?
Yeah, no, Adam, I think, all very topical and in the moment, but I think the most important headline from a broker's perspective really is the potential relaxation of the radio ownership rules. There's been a lot of discussion about this over the past several years, and that relaxation or those relaxation of those rules would be very helpful, would drive a significant amount of transactions in what continues to be a fairly slow market for radio transactions.
Well, for years, radio station owners have been looking to Washington, D.C. as a catalyst for growth, reversing trends that have seen consumers and ad dollars go to digital and social media platforms. So certainly there is a potential for a deal-making frenzy, and we're already starting to see some of it in the television universe. But what about for LPTV? That is a slightly different arena, and you've certainly been very involved there. What can you share about the players and deal-making potential within that part of the broadcast television industry?
Yeah, Adam, LPTV values have often been and long been driven by technical upside, sort of what can be done, spectrum possibility, the reach of these signals, the unique ability to kind of weave them together and reach a massive footprint across the United States. So I think that 3.0 continues to be a hot topic in that space, as well as 5G has been coming on strong lately, and I think really driving a lot of interest in the market, not driving transactions as of yet. The market still's really driven by content providers and folks looking to distribute traditional broadcast programming. But I continue to believe in the long term that the technical upside, the spectrum upside of these licenses will really deliver a lot of value.
Now, LPTV broadcasters all seem to have, a different take on ATSC 3.0. That is the digital broadcast TV standard that a large segment of the media industry wants to all of a sudden have as a mandated signal. The new broadcast TV standard is such that it's going to require a lot of investment, and at least some of the low power television community believes that it's not something that they want to go to, that they're perfectly happy with ATSC 1.0 and perhaps wish to invest in 5G broadcast. The LPTV Broadcasters Association has split, I guess, from the ATBA, in terms of where low power television's future lies. Super Frank Copsidas believes 5G broadcast is the best route for these mini stations, if you will. Let's look at all this from a broker's perspective. What does this conversation bring to those that are eyeing low power television properties? Do they understand all of this in terms of what the future could bring and how this could be a valued addition to their broadcast holdings?
Yeah, I think from a broker's and buyer's perspective, 5G holds a lot of promise and a lot of upside, particularly for low power broadcasters. I think that it is, a technology that gets television and gets these signals into phones. Is really focused, more in that direction. And so I think there's a lot more upside seen. It's driving a lot of interest. It's a newer technology that really is. Seems to be friendlier and play nicer, at least from buyer's perspective, with the LPTV signals and providing upside in different ways to use and monetize those signals versus full power. So, I think Super Frank and the coalition, really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on out there and how, buyers, brokers, and people that value and trade in these types of stations really view the future and the possibilities of technology in LPTV.
I'm curious if you can share who some of the buyers might be for low power television stations. We certainly hear a lot about the full power potential buyers and sellers, and we'll get to that later on in the podcast. But are we talking about entrepreneurs? Are we talking about venture capitalists? Are we talking about people that are technology focused and they're really using LPTVs to build out something that is not so consumer focused, but is more for perhaps broadcast data or something in that space?
Buyers in the LPTV space continue to be content focused. Folks with, networks, streams of programming, wanting to get their word out and get their message out. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of the big four network affiliate groups buying a number of LPTV stations. That slowed a little bit as their focus has really shifted to consolidating the network affiliate space. So it continues to really be content focused, although I do field a number of calls and have a lot of conversations on the data side with folks starting to take a look at this from a spectrum perspective. And while they're not trading at this point based on that and buying in the space, I do expect that is likely to change in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a good point to take a quick little commercial break. We'll be right back with Greg Guy right after this commercial message from our sponsor. Stay right there.
Stand out online? Get your .fm domain. Perfect for streaming your music, building your social community, hosting your podcast, or broadcasting your brand. .fm, it's your online destination. Get yours today at www.get.fm.
And I'm back. Hi, it's Adam R. Jacobson here, and I'm joined by Greg Guy of Tideline Partners. Greg, every day we see radio station deals get filed for FCC regulatory approval. It's not exactly a dreary marketplace as we see it when it comes to deal volume, but let's face it, some of these valuations have been, in recent cases, shockingly low. Non-secular buyers continue to drive many of these deals. Is it deregulation that will create renewed interest in radio from the people that you're talking about as a broker, or is there something more? And to that end, what is the interest in radio from those that you're having conversations with today? Is it balanced?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Adam. I think that, right now what we're seeing is a marketplace that's actually accelerating for good assets and starting to pick up. There aren't, the market for stations isn't tremendously deep, but there are good buyers with capital and resources rolling up groups and being acquisitive in the commercial space. Values continue to be somewhat depressed based on sort of forward-looking projections for broadcast radio revenue. And so you see a lot of the non-secular groups acquiring stations. As we look forward, I think that deregulation holds a lot of hope and promise for commercial broadcasters to continue to expand in the space, to get controlling interest from a radio standpoint in a market, help maintain a little rate integrity and create unique, local news outlets and other opportunities to help monetize, as well as generate additional digital dollars. So, I think the market continues to be fairly slow, but actually has picked up year to date. I expect that to continue, and I expect it to pick up dramatically, as the deregulation efforts on radio appear to be moving forward.
Mhm. Now let's go back to broadcast television and the full power TV stations. Every other day, I seem to get calls and emails asking for my thoughts and opinions on who the buyers and who the sellers are. And I'm just going to refuse to respond anymore because I was certain Tegna was a buyer. So what the heck do I know? But on that note, it is clear that the stage has been set, at least in the broadcast TV industry, when it comes to the full power TV leaders. Has this made the media brokerage community perhaps a little more competitive in scoring this potentially major deal? Or are those rumors true that all these deals are already done and it's just a matter of putting the dates and signatures on them, and that this goes back to the NAB show in April?
Yeah, these conversations have been ongoing for quite some time since the rumblings started this spring. I can tell you from direct conversations, there's a lot of people talking about a lot of things on both as a buyer and as a seller. So I think it's difficult to label any groups specifically as buyers or sellers. It seems that Gray and Nexstar, through their recent announcements, both are actively growing and acquiring. Beyond those two groups, a lot remains to be seen. I think a lot of the brokerage community and the television community expected a lot more swaps to roll up these duopolies in markets. We haven't seen as much of that, but it will be very interesting to see who the buyers are, who the sellers are in a market and environment where there's just not a tremendous amount of capital available for acquiring these groups and rolling up the industry.
When we look at buyers and sellers, sometimes we often forget that some of the mom and pops, if you will, are flush with cash. And I point to Southwest Florida. Look at what Sun Broadcasting and Fort Myers Broadcast are doing between the McBride family and the Schwartzels. That is pretty significant because it involves acquisitions from two publicly traded broadcast media companies that could use a little bit of extra cash right now. They aren't desperation deals by any means. It looks like some of the valuations there are on target, I think, with the assets and what the sale represents to each of those companies, Scripps and Beasley Media Group in particular. Are you going to see more of those types of deals, or is that just a unique situation? Because certainly we would love to have more private capital come into the marketplace, and access to equity is always a conversation that we seem to be having. Is it more than just like the big five as far as the buyers and sellers go?
I think in television, in television, it's going to be limited likely to the big five, and the network affiliate groups continue to roll up the space. I think your point in radio, there are a number of mom and pop groups. The Schwartzels and Sun Broadcasting have been very aggressive and very astute in rolling up that market and being inquisitive. And so I think on the radio side, you're going to see a lot of those transactions being driven by mom and pop and regional groups acquiring, further consolidating their holdings in the market. So I think that's much more likely to happen on the radio side, where you don't really have major groups driving the space with capital available, and the operating economics and efficiencies are different with network affiliate relationships and things in television. So I think in radio, absolutely, it's going to be the regional groups and folks like that really drive that M&A activity. But in television, it's likely to be the established names that we all know and that have been acquisitive to date.
Now let's look to the long-awaited 2022 quadrennial review. It is very interesting that Chairman Carr is willing to look at the ban of combining two of the big four networks. Could we actually see CBS and Fox merging, or ABC and Fox merging? Is that something that could theoretically be possible? At the same time, we're having conversations about how, well, perhaps a network should have an ownership cap, whereas the non-network owned companies, the Nexstars of the world and the Gray Medias of the world, can own as many stations as they choose.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, I think the proper response to that is to expect the unexpected. I think seeing networks potentially combine is certainly within the realm of possibility. I think there's a lot of other deals, and a lot of these big deals and swaps and trades that are likely to come down are going to be different than what everybody anticipates or expects.
Mhm.
Obviously, the Tegna transaction was a massive deal that shook up the industry quite a bit when it was announced. And frankly, I expect more of the same. You just don't have a lot of major groups in a capital position to acquire major groups of assets. You've got a network business that is a challenging business and continues to be challenging. So I think the combination of those two will likely see some unique combinations that would be difficult to anticipate sitting here looking forward.
Mhm. Before we conclude this podcast, I want to turn our attention to AM radio and the AM Radio in Every Vehicle Act. It continues to gain congressional support, but has yet to reach a floor vote. And some brokers have shared with us over the last several years that the AM radio deal making market is dead. I don't want to use those extremes. I am a consumer of AM radio, although not as often as FM. I found myself in Gilbert, Arizona last week, and I was listening to AM radio, in particular at night. What are your thoughts on the AM radio ban from the perspective of buyers and sellers? Is there a marketplace, or if not, how can a seller attract a buyer?
It's a very challenging space from an M&A perspective. There are buyers, there are deals potentially to get done, but what we really face is a very shallow buyer pool, a very challenging technology, a horizon that doesn't look particularly positive, with sort of receivers continue to be put in cars that aren't as good, don't receive AM as well. And so, I'm not seeing a lot of activity in the space. There are a handful of buyers, particularly for AMs with FM translators in major markets. Typically, they tend to be niche broadcasters, whether it be religious, foreign language, or other specific targeted niches. But AM is not dead. It's certainly viable and has some interesting opportunities out there. But from an M&A standpoint, it's a more challenged subset of a challenging space.
Mhm. And I'm guessing you're a baseball fan based on that big poster of somebody in back of you. I can't really see who that is, but when I think of AM radio, I think of summer nights tuning around the dial, listening to a lot of baseball. And I know that is still a huge dynamic when it comes to a lot of teams and a lot of cities. So access to AM radio and the continued importance of that is definitely something that we'll be continuing to watch. What are the other topics of conversation that you're hearing from those that might be interested in buying or selling their stations? Is there something that really sticks out that we've not talked about on this podcast?
Yeah, I think that some of the topics that folks are looking at right now, a lot of what's going on in the public media space with public radio and television, I think in the commercial space, the potential for additional rule changes with the delete, what that can change for things like the Rural Radio Initiative or other topics allowing folks to move stations around, and some of the other sort of smaller, more often overlooked rules. So I think there's a lot of hope and optimism and creativity, frankly, in the space, with sort of the rules being cracked open and a fresh look being taken to see where the opportunities might lie. I think in the television side, it continues to be the roll-up of the network affiliate space, how these swaps, how these half a dozen or so major groups will shake out, who will own what, and what the networks are going to end up doing.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all the questions I had for you today. It's always a great thing to have a conversation with someone who's very active with potential buyers and sellers. And it looks like the marketplace going into 2026 will certainly be one of uncertainty, but will certainly be thriving in a lot of ways. And we know that TV stations are probably driving a lot of the deals, but we'll see what's next on the radio horizon.
Appreciate it, Adam. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you for being here. And we want to thank you, the viewer, also for taking time to watch this RBR and TVBR InFOCUS video podcast. It was presented by .fm, streaming social podcast or broadcast. Get a .fm domain name by heading over to get.fm today. The InFOCUS video podcast is copyright 2025 by Streamline Publishing. It's produced and distributed on the StreamYard platform. And again, we thank .fm at get.fm today. From Boca Raton, Florida, headquarters of Streamline Publishing and the home of both Radio Inc. magazine and the Radio and Television Business Report, I'm Adam R. Jacobson. Be sure to find us at Radio and Television Business Report's website, rbr.com, each and every business day. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.